Hey y'all. Today it's Briar versus Chane, and I've got a bit of a spicy Briar list for you all today. This is Belittle and Explosive Growth Briar. So let's see how this performs. I won the die roll and chose to go first, obviously, because I might get lucky and be able to slam a Child Mount Heroic on turn one, or I can just set up, say, a Rune Chant. In this case, I decide to just set up an embodiment of lightning, stronger than a rune chant. So I just play this Pulse of Candlehold with no targets, which you're allowed to do because it says up to 2 target cards. So, I just pick 0. And I play this Earthlaw Surge, get the embodiment of lightning, and then pass the turn. Get to arsenal the Snatch with embodiment of lightning on the field already, so that feels pretty good. And our opponent is Chane, so, this matchup is just going to be a race, which is another reason why I was okay just playing the Pulse out. Because, if I pitch it, I'm not seeing it again this entire game. Because, it's Chane. Like, this game is gonna last, at most, 4 or 5 turns. Okay. Opponent plays Belittle, showing me a Riftbind. Pitching a red, though. So we know our opponent was a little resource light in this hand. Yep, so they go and find a blue minimalism, as expected, since they pitch a red. And we just say no blocks. I mean, in this Runeblade mirror, when it's a race, first person to start blocking is the person who's losing. So definitely don't want to be blocking unless there's a seriously threatening on hit. Which Chane doesn't have too many of. CNC is about the only thing. They might run Runics into Briar because of, yeah, if you have Chalmont Heroic out and then they hit you with Runic Reclamation, you kind of have to block that. But aside from that, not too many on-hits in Chane, so we just take this 4 from this Unhallowed Rites, and then this Rosetta is just coming in for 2 physical, because there's no non-attack played this turn. So to be honest, just looking at this board state now, I'm not sure whether going first is always the correct play. There might be an argument for going second, because looking at this Arsenal and Embodiment of Lightning basically cost me 9 health. And I'm not entirely sure whether that is a good trade. Of course, if I got Channel Mount Heroic down, then that's a different story. But just an Embodiment of Lightning and an Arsenal doesn't feel necessarily worth 9 health. But anyway, so we go to R10. We start with the red Vexing Malice. It pops our Embodiment of Lightning. So this has go again. And of course, our opponent isn't blocking either. We go ahead and make our Embodiment of Earth, which means now the Swarming Gloomveil has go again, because we made an aura this turn. So we go in with 3 go again. Okay, opponent takes that 3. And then we go ahead and do the Snatch. The idea being that if our opponent lets us draw, then we can, like, depending on what we draw, like, our play might change, but as long as it's a card that we're okay with arsenaling, what I can do is just creep us out this Amulet of Earth and then swing Rosetta. And of course, in this sort of race matchup where I expect the game to only go 3-4 turns, I'm totally okay using my creepers so aggressively like this. And we know our opponent has already taken Arcane this turn from the Vexing Malice, so there's no threat of the creepers going away. So as expected, our opponent doesn't block. Lets us draw. So now I can go ahead and spend 1 to creep us out Amulet of Earth, and then use the last floating, and I get my action point back, and I use the last floating to Thorn. So pretty solid turn there. That was what, 5 from Vexing Malice, 3 from Gloomveil, a total of 16 damage, and we still get to Arsenal in the end. So, pretty happy at how that turn played out. Yep, opponent takes a 2 Arcane from Rosetta and then blocks the physical with Skullcap. Opponent hitting on their 1 banish, which is definitely quite fortunate. The chain list doesn't, runs maybe about like 20 or so, like less than half Blood Dead cards, so them hitting on Shackle 1 is definitely very fortunate for them. Normally you start to see the chains hit on like Shackled, 3 onwards. And our opponent also had a Soul Reaping. So Soul Reaping, they banish 2 Blooded cards, getting 2 resources. Again, we're just not going to be blocking until we see either threatening on hit or a lethal attack. Okay, opponent plays one of the howls that they banished. They have already shackled this turn. That was how the Soul Reaping had go again. Okay, and then they pitch Yellow Mormon Skies for this Riftbind, which is coming in for 7 total. Yep. Cool. And then they take 1 to their own Blood Debt, and they get to bank on that Howl from Beyond. Right, and we have a bit of a clowny hand, honestly, but it still works. And you'll see the power of Explosive Growth in a bit. So I go in Bramble Spark, fuse the Channel Mount Heroic. Bramble Spark again, fuse the same Channel Mount Heroic, trigger Briar, an Embodiment of Lightning. And then now I play the Explosive Growth, fused again with the same Channel Mount Heroic. So that means this Explosive Growth is now coming in for 3 separate instances of 1 arcane damage. 2 from the Bramble Sparks, 1 from its own effect, and currently sitting at 9 physical. Of course, our opponent has no way to block these arcanes, so they all hit, and all of them trigger Explosive Growth's effect. So, each of them increases its attack by 1. So now this Explosive Growth is coming in for 12, and increasing any other attack I do this turn by a total of 3 for now. But our opponent only puts Husk in front of this and takes 6, so Explosive Growth triggers again. So any attack I do for the remaining of this turn on this combat chain will be increased by 4. Of course, I had the option of popping an Amulet of Earth there just to get 1 extra damage in. I decided to bank it because I think it was a bit of a greedy play by me, but I was expecting that I could be able to fuse again next turn and hopefully get more than just 1 damage out of it. So bank the Amulet of Earth, but now this Rosetta is coming in for 2 arcane and 6 physical, because its physical attacks being buffed by 4 from the Explosive Growth. So pretty, you could say, explosive turn there. That was I didn't need all 5 cards in my hand, but I only used 4 of them and still got to Arsenal and Channel Mount Heroic, and end up coming representing 23 damage total. So that's really nice. We had the option of using a Tunic resource to, make a Rune Chant before swinging the Thorn. Oh, using the 2 floating to make a Rune Chant, use Tunic to swing Thorn. But that means that we're using a Tunic resource just for 1 extra damage. And that didn't feel worth it to me. The way I see this matchup is that, if the game's only going like 4 turns, I'm only getting 1 activation of Tunic, and I want to make sure it counts. 1 extra damage doesn't seem worth it. So yeah, anyway, we go to our opponent's turn. Our opponent is getting godly banishes. Like, they've hit a lot of the banishes. So they started with a Shadow Versa. They gave it go again by banishing a Blood Dead card. I just took that 2, and then they play Shadow Puppetry into this Unhallowed Rites, coming in for 5. So this is somewhat of a threatening on hit. If I could block this completely with equipment, I would. I mean, I guess I could, but I don't want to lose Tunic or Creepers. So, Skullcap and Grasp wasn't enough to block this, so I just let my opponent have the on-hit, just hoping that with the, fewer amount of Blood Debt that they have, that Chains run nowadays, and also the fact that they've been hitting so much, that they would miss this. Yeah, so I took the 5 from this, and I'm just really hoping my opponent, doesn't get this banish here. But, of course, my opponent, godly player that they are, actually did hit again. So I think out of all the banishes they've done so far, I think they've only... Wait, I don't even think they've missed at all. I don't see anything else in their banish zone that isn't Blood Debt. Yeah, so definitely pretty fortunate for my opponent there. Yeah, opponent uses the 2 floating to play the Howl from Beyond, and then they shackle. The Shadow Versa I'd go again because they banish a Blood Debt card. Unhallowed Rise I go again because they play Shadow Puppetry. And now they shackle. So this Ripbind is coming in for 6. It was not played from a banish zone, so it is not getting buffed from its own effect. It's just getting buffed from Howl from Beyond. So I go ahead and use my skull cap. Since I see an invert there, I do need to make sure I don't get too low, but I also don't want to be blocking. So I go ahead and take the Rosetta Arcane and block the physical with my skull cap. Okay, and my opponent uses the floating to play that invert that they banished from the Shadow Puppetry. Just so, they take one less blood debt and the damage it'll deal to me is the same either way. So then I take 2 to blood debt. It's our turn, and we have an all-red hand, and here's where the power of Belittle really shines. I can use my Tunic resource to play the Belittle. So also, really glad that I saved my Tunic instead of using it the previous turn for the 1 extra damage. And now I get to search up a blue Minimism. Yep, there we go, find a blue Minimism. Now this Belittle is coming in for 3. And with our hand here, we're going to be in a position to make our opponent block first, which is where you want to be in this aggro mirror, particularly against Chane, because you start making them block, it means they are less likely to clear their blood debt, so they take even more damage that way. So, feeling pretty good here. Definitely regretting not popping the amulet the previous turn, since this turn we did not get a fuse hand. This was probably a bit greedy by me the previous turn to not pop that. Okay, so my opponent's pitching. Ooh, and they pitch for an Art of War. Okay. Probably a good call by them, since that card doesn't block, and I guess they're making the read that they're gonna have to block this turn. So they might as well go ahead and get the value from the +1 right now. So my opponent declares blocking 2 here, and they go ahead and take the damage, but I stop them and tell them I actually have a reaction before you go to damage. I activate Creepers, pitching an Earth card, which is the red Chalmant Heroic, and then I pitch the blue Minimism that I fetched to flash out the Chalmant Heroic in my arsenal. This, of course, brings me up to 2 action points, and makes the Belittle come in for 6, and since they're only blocking 2, they end up taking 4, and they go to 3. And then over here, we have an interesting choice. We can play Promise of Plenty and then pitch Vexing Malice to swing the Thorn. I choose not to do that, and it's probably a bit too paranoid from me to not do that. But what I was worried about is that if my opponent is holding an Invert Existence in hand, and I play this Promise of Plenty, they can say, block with the 2 block from hand, Grasp of the Arknight, and Creepers, take 1. Promise of Plenty hits, we both get an arsenal, and if I basically draw them into another Invert Existence, with their 2 float, they could cast the one that gets put in the arsenal and the one that's in their hand, and actually kill me in response to the Rosetta Swing. Definitely, I mean, that's so unlikely, because we've already seen one Invert Existence, and my opponent would need to be holding one, and the top card needs to be an Invert Existence for that play to, actually kill me. So that's why I choose not to do a Promise of Plenty. It was probably a little too conservative from my side. And I go ahead and play as Vexing Malice instead. Which, given what I was trying to play around, is probably a worse call to make. Because, because this gives my opponent more chance to, banish 2 inverts off the top of the deck when it goes to their turn. So, anyway, I actually did deal Arcane to my opponent, so from the Vexing Malice, so I don't lose my Creepers. And there's an Earth card in my pit zone, so Chalmant Heroic stays in the field. And my opponent's at 1, which means that really I just need to block out whatever they do this turn, and they'll just die to their own husk. And with them only having 1 card in hand is looking pretty good. The only thing we lose to is literally double Invert Existence. And our opponent's finally missing on some banishers, and they actually do banish an Invert Existence. But now actually there's no way they can play 2 of them, because even if the one in their hands are invert, they can't, they only have 1 card to pitch. Yep, so they just pitch that, do an Invert Existence, they activate Creepers for fun, and just swing Thorn for 2 physical, which we can just block. Honestly, we can just block with equipment here, like just Grasp and Tunic, and then they just die to their own husk, and yeah. So yeah, that was the game. Definitely quite an explosive deck here. Creepers really makes this explosive growth deck works, and Belittle just feels really great, especially when you're running explosive growth. It's a Belittle target, and it sort of bails you out of your all red hands, which sometimes when you get that as Briar, it's really sad, and you don't have much of a way out. And yeah, that was the game. Thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed it.